Good afternoon, good morning, Mr. Matt, all the way in New Zealand. How you folks doing today? Hopefully everybody's doing well. Today we kind of have a pretty cool special guest. It's not going to be as in depth as the one before, where it was a huge presentation. We're kind of going to go on the, we're going to ride the lightning all the way through it and just kind of go off of a really great blog article that Mr. Andrew Patch had written on his website. Andrew's now a partner with us as well for drones, and he specializes in drones. He wrote a really great article, which I'm going to link in the chat as well as screen share here in a minute, about how drones can benefit your real estate business. And Mr. Andrew, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time out of your day to sit with us and kind of shoot the crap about drones and how they can help real estate agents. Why don't you start off by kind of introducing yourself, letting them know how long you've been in the drone business and what got you started and all that good stuff.
Sure. Thanks for the introduction. So
Yeah.
my name is Andrew Patch, the owner of Heartland Drone Company, and Heartland Drone Company is it's been around for 2 years now. Prior to that, I did a lot of freelance marketing, graphic design work, video work, and about 2 years ago, I had my first interaction with drone footage and drone video, and I was completely blown away by it because you get to see something from an angle you've never seen it from before. And at that time I was just hooked on the impact that drones could have. So 2 years ago, launched Heartland Drone Company, and the company itself really it's kind of like a three-legged stool, right? So the company, the first leg of it is services for the real estate industry. The second leg of it is asset and building inspections. And what I mean by that is like you might have an architect or a structural engineer or a restoration company that is, for example, looking at a historic building, and they might need to assess the envelope of the building, right? The masonry, the tuck pointing, the terracotta, all that stuff. So you can use drones for that, and it saves a lot of time and money. So that's the inspection pillar of the company, or inspection leg. And then the third and final is kind of a catch-all, and it's just creative marketing. So I'll work with a wide variety of clients from all different types of industries, build with businesses of all different sizes, and I'll implement the drone into some sort of creative marketing project or outcome for them. So there's some clients that I work with that cover, a couple different silos. I might, or legs of the company. I might be working with a real estate company that wants me to promote real estate, but then I might also do some other type of creative project for them. But all of it involves the drone in one way or another. There's so much you can do with drones.
And how long have you been doing it? I'm sorry, I missed that part.
Yeah, sure. The last 2 years.
2 years, very cool. One of the things that I briefly read over this blog and watched some of the videos and stuff on it. It's actually really well written, so kudos for that.
Thanks.
The big thing, and it's funny, I've been doing it for 5 years, and we've always been kind of hyping up drones and 3D footage and stuff like that, and VR specifically, just because it seems like it's the new technology. It's the best way that you can really let your brand stand out as an agent. One of the things that never really clicked in my head is to fly the drone inside the actual building and act almost as if it's a first-person perspective walking down a hallway, or just getting an idea of how expansive a specific room is. When did you come up with that idea, and when did you start implementing that?
Well, so there's a couple different events that happened where I really started incorporating the drone indoors. The first one was for a construction company, and they had just built a warehouse. And so there's this giant warehouse. It's like 2 stories tall. It's the size of like 5 football fields. And they wanted video of inside the warehouse. So in that case, it was a big wide open space, and I flew the drone indoors to help tell that story of that space. And then that was one event that first got me started with flying indoors. And then the other one was a project where I was going to fly in downtown Kansas City, and I showed up on site. I was going to get some exterior outdoor video of a construction company that was pouring some waterproofing material, and so I wanted to get some shots from up above, right, with the drone. And I went to go start the drone, right, fly it up in the air, and it wouldn't fly. Well, I didn't realize I was in restricted airspace for the downtown airport, and the FAA actually, using GPS, grounded my drone.
Killed the drone. No way.
Wow, I didn't know that
know.
was a technology that was available.
They've come a long way in the last 2 years. So
Well, how about that?
yeah. So anyways, I couldn't fly the drone, and I was like, oh crap, how am I going to get these shots, of this crew working? So you take lemons and you make lemonade. So I actually picked up the drone, and it wasn't running or anything, right? It was powered on, the camera was working, and so I just walked around with the drone and got close-up shots of the crew pouring this waterproofing solution and doing their thing. And it was actually some of the best footage that I've ever captured, and it came from me actually walking around with the drone.
That's funny.
Holding it in my hand, and because it's such a high definition camera, and I could slow down the frame rate on there, I could get these really smooth slow motion shots of them like pouring materials out of buckets. Like what's sexier than that, right?
Yeah. and that just comes to, that just brings to mind some of the, because I know for some agents that are in here right now that might not have invested in the equipment. It might seem, like kind of a big learning curve to, learn how to fly it and to get those really cinematic outside shots. But if you can just kind of slowly walk through a house and use that same really high quality camera like that, you could do a pretty, good looking virtual tour, quote unquote, just to really enhance your listings a little bit. Is that, kind of something that you think that would be useful for folks?
Yeah, that's spot on. That's spot on. I consider it as a hack. It's a hack in your toolkit, and you don't need to buy a drone, and then you don't need to buy a second, steady camera to walk around inside with. Just use the drone for both, because it has that mechanical gimbal on there. It already is a steady cam, and I know it can be intimidating. It can be scary if you're wanting to adopt video or drone use into your real estate strategy because of the cost, but you can maximize what you're doing with just one simple drone and have a huge impact.
Well, let's speaking of equipment and costs, let's talk about that for a bit. If I'm agent Chris McHale, I just scored a big house. I've got some cash to spend on my branding, and I want to dive into drones. I know that 2 years ago, it was a pretty pricey venture to get into. Lately, it seems like some of these companies have come out with very, very cheap, not cheap drones, but at least something to enter the atmosphere in with relative ease. What are some of the best entry level drones, and why do you think that they're probably the good ones for a real estate agent who has had little to no experience using drones? What are some of the good ones to take a look at?
Sure. So I use DJI. And so DJI is the manufacturer, and I have a Phantom 4 Pro. Now that's a solid drone. That's probably mid-tier or slightly above mid-tier, but there are some that are below that that are not as expensive. Mine it's like $1,600.
Okay.
But then the tier right below that is the Mavic Pro, and that's a couple $100 less, and then even from there's the Spark, and that's a couple $100 less from the Mavic. So you're talking, a range of anywhere from $700, $800 up to $1,500, and that's brand new, because you can buy older versions of those drones, and they're not as expensive.
Sure.
So really, it's depending on how much you're going to use it. I consider it as a valuable investment that you should have made yesterday, because you're going to get so much out of it that it's going to pay for itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess in regards to price, so I'm really into ultralight backpacking, and there's this phrase that people always throw around. It's that you buy once, you cry once. So basically you kind of, instead of paying $200 for that really cheap one that you can kind of get at the Discovery store in the mall, maybe it would be a better investment to spend a little bit more, even right off the bat, so that you can kind of have that really pro tool that would even maybe have a good resale value down the road.
Yeah, and really, just look at technology in general. Like, if you're going to buy a laptop, odds are you're going to buy the newest version of a laptop, right? If I'm going to buy a MacBook, I'm going to buy the newest MacBook. If I'm going to buy a cell phone, I'm probably going to buy the newest one, because technology is always evolving and changing. And so, so I would do the same. Personally, I would do the same thing with a drone. But I mean, you don't have to. But I just like to be on the front end of the latest version of that piece of technology. But heck, even my Phantom 4 Pro that I have is now not even the newest one, and it still works great. It still updates just fine. It still operates, like it did the day I bought it. But but yeah, I mean, that's just kind of my philosophy on that is, you just if buy the newest one that isn't refurbished or anything like that, and you're in good shape. But if you can't afford that and you want to buy something different, there's a lot of good options out there to find that.
Yeah, and it's kind of like you said with laptops, like you always are going to buy the latest and greatest. And Chris, I agree with you. Some of these drones have significant resale value down the road, especially some of the more pricey ones that are a lot more productive at getting the job done. The next thing that I want to talk about. Okay, so I've bought my drone. I spent $1,600 on it. I went to go fly next in the park. Next thing I know, the police come up and give me a ticket. I didn't do my Part 107 exam. Do you know the exact specifics on how to get that done? Is it state by state? What's the deal with the FAA grounding drones and really making it difficult for people to get a drone up in the air?
Yeah, good question. Because I think there's a lot of unknown around that, and that's one thing that freaks people out. but after doing it for a while, it's kind of funny how much it does freak people out, because it's not like the FAA.
Sure.
The FAA doesn't have like this task force of 60,000 employees who are constantly just roaming around the country, in partnership with police departments to come bust people. The FAA does not have the resources to do that. So first and foremost, don't be afraid of the FAA, and they're going to do everything they can to make sure that that you're aware of the rules and that you're flying in partnership with what the rules are for airspace. But to answer your question, so to get your Part 107. If you're going to be flying for commercial purposes, if you're operating a drone for commercial use, and commercial use doesn't just mean you're getting paid to fly the drone or you're getting some sort of compensation. Commercial use means if you're flying the drone to further a business, right? So you could be flying it for your church, right? And giving them the footage for free. Well, technically you're furthering a business, and even that business is a nonprofit, but still in that case, you are considered a commercial pilot. So there's commercial, and then there's just recreational. So if you bought a drone, you're flying it for your own personal use. You're not using the footage for any type of business purposes. Maybe you want to film your kid's softball game. You don't need a license for that from the FAA. All you have to do is make sure that you're following airspace rules. But if you are flying for commercial purposes or for real estate, technically you have to have your Part 107. To do that, there's a website. I can't remember it off the top of my head. I can send out the link after this webinar, but you can identify where the nearest testing center is in your state. So like, I'm located in Kansas, right? So the nearest testing center for me is the Johnson County Executive Airport, which is like 20 minutes away from me. So you actually have to go to that testing center, sign up to take the exam, and when you get there, they put you in a room, a private room. They take it very seriously. They pull up the test on the computer, and it's timed. I believe it's 50 questions. Each question is worth 2 points. And I think it was a couple of years since I passed it. I think you have to get at least score 80% or above on the test. So anyways, the test itself is very difficult, almost impossible if you've never studied for it.
Okay.
As is most things with the FAA.
Yeah. Because here's the other thing that a lot of people don't tell you about the test, or you might have a hard time finding, is that when the questions on the test are not about drones. They're really not. It's not about like, hey, what is the fuselage on this drone, or what is an airspace rule for this drone? I would say there's probably 4 questions on the test consisting of 50 questions, there's probably 4 of them that actually talk about a drone. And the rest of them are other types of airspace and aircraft questions. So like being able to identify weather patterns. Okay, if I'm in a Cessna and I'm taxiing down a runway and I see a black sign with a yellow arrow pointing to the left, what does that mean? Like, okay, no one flying a drone is ever going to encounter that, but they ask you that on the Part 107 drone exam. So there's if you know what to study for, you're good. And so fortunately, there's a lot of resources online, like a lot of testing centers that you can sign up for, pay a little bit of money to get in their curriculum. And then you can just go through and do their practice questions and things like that. And so that's what I did. I showed up super prepared. I think I only missed 2 questions on the exam. But that's because I followed one of the testing centers out there, and we can link to that after this too, because
that'd be great.
But the cost for that testing resource was like $150, and then the drone test through the FAA, that was $150. So I think at the end of the day, I was like $300 all in just to ensure that I passed the test and got my Part 107 license.
For sure, yeah.
And so once you take the Part 107 license, or do you have to renew it every 5 years? Is it just something you have and you're good for life with? Or
yeah, it's got like a 2-year renewal.
Oh, you might need to go get yours done then, huh, bud?
Calling me out. Well, fortunately, the FAA doesn't have people probably monitoring this webinar, so I think I'm probably good. Right. Maybe they are. I don't know. Yes, I do need to get mine renewed.
So, okay, cool. So there is a renewal process and all that good stuff. Totally cool. That seems like you're 100% right. That seems to be one of the big, either people don't really care about it or you're in an area where airspace really isn't an issue. But if you are one of those, inner city agents who did want to get a nice shot of a condominium or a high-rise apartment or something like that, you definitely need to pay attention to what the FAA is telling you to not do. And it can make or break a business in that matter, because the FAA does take that stuff very seriously. So make sure you do Part 107.
Yeah, you guys don't want to play around with that. We, definitely, follow the. We'll provide the resources for that after the webinar, and definitely make sure that you're, getting certified and doing it legally.
Right. So next thing, got my ticket, learned my lesson, went to go get my Part 107, and I practiced my drone again, and I crash it, and it explodes on me, and now I'm down $1,600. Is insurance a good thing to do? On average, how much does it cost to insure a drone, or what's the steps to get that sorted out?
Sure. So I really look at insurance as 2 different things. There's liability insurance that covers anything you crash into, right? Let's say you crash into somebody's car, you go through a window, you crash into a person, right? So that type of liability insurance plus insurance coverage on the drone itself. Now there are, so to be insured if you cause harm or somehow harm is inflicted on somebody or something, and then you also want to insure the drone itself, to get insurance for that, there are providers out there. If you did, simply just doing a Google search, you can find insurance groups out there that would cover that. It's not being adopted super quick by insurance companies because there's just so much unknown about drones, right? Because they can be easy to crash, but and it's really hard to develop like an accurate score for somebody. Like how risky are you as somebody that we would insure, because there's not like records of drone crashes, right? So it's different from like auto insurance, but so there's that element, and then, or that type of insurance, but I actually don't have insurance on my drone itself. I know that if I crash it, I'm just going to be out that, because honestly, the cost to pay for that insurance, for that level of insurance, would be more than what I'd be wanting to spend. So what I do as an alternate is I just have liability insurance that covers me if something that I do with the drone hurts somebody or damages an asset or somebody's property. And so the company that I would actually recommend for that is a company called Verifly. Now, Verifly, it's pretty cool. You download their app on your phone, and when you show up on site, all you do is open up the app, and there's just a picture of a map, and it has like a 1/4-mile circle around where you're at. It uses GPS to identify where you're at, right? Where you're at in your town, in your city, whatever. It also, on that map, it identifies certain airspaces or certain zones
that's cool.
that would adjust what your insurance rate would be. And so you're paying for on-demand insurance. So let's say I'm going to go fly a house, right? I'm going to go fly a residence, and I'm going to be there for probably 35 or 40 minutes. Well, I can drive up to the house. Right before I turn the drone on, I can pull out my phone, get on Verifly, which is free to join, and then I can purchase a policy on demand that's going to last 1 hour, and it sets a geofence around my area. So as long as I'm flying the drone within that 1/4-mile geofence, then I'm covered. Anything I crash into, anything that I do wrong, just from liability.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's super slick. And here's kind of going back to cost, right? Because I know the big question with everybody, and especially with real estate agents, is like, hey, how much does all this stuff cost? Well, Verifly, their policies start at $10. So you're talking about, I can get a $10 million policy that has an additional $10,000 in personal privacy insurance for $10 an hour. Yeah, I'm going to do that. If I did that other version of insurance that we talked about that included the actual drone in it, I'd be spending like $200 a month. I'm not going to do that. So for me, that makes it's no brainer to do that on-demand option through the company named Verifly.
Very cool. That's interesting. I never knew about this stuff. I'm learning so much. It's actually really cool. All right. So, we're talking about all of the monetary costs. I did read here, it doesn't say it's that difficult to fly a drone. It is a little overwhelming probably when you first start. What do you see with like a novice pilot? How long does it take them to really become competent enough to fly a drone, be productive at creating video footage and just getting the stuff that they need and then walking out? So if I'm going to a house, I've learned how to fly my drone. On average, how long does it take to get the shots you need? And then how long does it take to edit it back home?
That's a really good question, and kind of a lot to unpack there, because there's definitely different elements to it. Some take a lot more practice than others. But I think to start with this, learning how to fly a drone, listen, I grew up in the late 80s. And so when I was a little kid, I always had a controller in my hand playing video games. Okay. And so when you're holding the controller to fly the drone, it all comes back to you pretty quick,
Oh, yeah.
And so I think that's one element. That's like kind of the easiest way that I can describe it. But you get the hang of it. If you took your drone out to, a park or a soccer field or something, and just after 30 minutes or 20 minutes of flying it, you kind of get the hang of it. And it's not like you need to be some drone racing expert, or, it's not like you need to be fitting the thing in between super tight spaces and stuff like that. You just need to position the drone to get a good shot of the listing that you're trying to capture.
And then use the camera for the rest of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, very cool.
So all you need to do is just know how to get the drone into the right position and then hit the record button on it, and it starts capturing that content. And it's not like you need to have the perfect take either. If you're capturing video of a house and you're trying to rotate, around the back porch or something, or around the back deck, that doesn't have to necessarily be an entire smooth shot. But if most of it's smooth, then you can just edit that afterward, right? And now you have great footage that looks super smooth and with very little, sometimes no editing even being done. So the amount of time it would take you to capture a property, I think you could easily get it done in an hour. Me personally, I get it done super quick just because I've been doing it for a long time, but you get it pretty quick. And then editing that's a tough question to answer, because it depends on like how much you want to incorporate into your editing. Like, do you want to have text that pops up
Right.
to describe.
We could have a whole nother chat about that.
Oh, we could. Yeah, I'm telling
Yeah.
you, we really could, But I think for a lot of people, if they're trying to do it themselves, right, that they could get away with super easy editing. That if they have one of the newer laptops out there in the last 5 years has probably got some free editing program on it.
Yep.
So being able to edit that footage really doesn't take a lot of work. A little practice there too, but I think people get the hang of it relatively quickly. But in some cases, editing I would say is actually the hardest element of it all. But maybe that's a topic for another day.
Yeah, definitely. And just so you folks know too, we did bring up the podcast again. We're going to do a podcast about drone footage as well, which would be super fun to chat about. But, the other big thing too is, the battery life on these things usually lasts, from what I saw when I was kind of dabbling into it, was anywhere between 15 to 30 to 45 minutes. Some of them, and it says here, bring 2 to 3 backup batteries. That's definitely a must in your case, right? I mean, you definitely want the batteries there. You definitely want to make sure that once the drone's juice is out, you can just pop another one in and then keep flying and get your stuff done.
Yep, no doubt. And batteries I buy the batteries from DJI. I don't buy some aftermarket or third-party battery on Amazon. Right. Sometimes those don't they don't operate like the actual DJI battery does, and you have issues there. So the batteries are like $160 a piece.
Okay, cool. And then, the last thing before we wrap up here and people can start kind of grilling you with questions if they do have any, the last thing that you did put in here was fly safe. If you want, you don't have to, but I always like to kind of make people feel a little uncomfortable. Have you ever ran into a code red situation when you've been working or been flying your drone at all? A nice life lesson for people to make sure that they remember?
Yeah, I hit a tree one time and I still feel so stupid about it because I was trying to get, there was a semi truck that was pulling into a construction site. I wanted to get this really cool sweeping view of like rotating around the semi truck, and went right into the very top of a tree. And so I guess the piece of advice there would be, don't always rely on just looking through the camera or the viewfinder of the drone. Also look up at the drone, because the camera doesn't tell you what's coming at you from the side. And in that case, I was moving laterally and going to the side. So, but I learned a lot from it, and the drone didn't die. But it was a good learning lesson.
Very cool. Well, with that said, we can wrap up chat. And I really appreciate you taking 30 minutes out of your day to kind of shoot the shit with us and hang out and have a good time. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask. Chris, did anybody ask anything or wanted to highlight anything?
We didn't get any. We had, oh my gosh, we did get a little anecdote of somebody having an accident with the drone and her dog. So definitely be careful around animals with those guys. Yeah. Eric Van Winkle just says that he contracts somebody out in California to do some, and then he edits it himself. So, that's a good option too. For you guys.
Speaking of contracting, Andrew, what's like, a good price point for somebody who wants to contract out? If I don't have the time and energy, I've got the money, I want somebody to go get these shots. And I don't want to be ripped off. I don't want to be one of those guys who goes into a car dealership and have them screw me over. What's a good price point to start looking at for that type of stuff?
Well, I charge typically anywhere from $150 to $200 an hour. Okay. That's just to fly the drone and capture all the content, and then I'll charge by the hour to edit. So that would be full service end to end. And so usually in that case, if you wanted a really nice video filmed and then created for you of your listing, I think that'd be in the range of anywhere from $300 to $400. Mm-hmm. And it fluctuates based on where you're flying. Sometimes I'll charge a little bit more if I'm having to fly into a restricted airspace, which I can do, but there's just a liability charge there. So, but I would say usually $300 to $400 range would be an end-to-end video listing.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, again, Andrew, thank you so much for spending time with us. When this is recorded, we will put this up on YouTube with the links that Andrew brought up about getting your license and making sure that you're covered and that and all that good stuff. Again, we will also be doing a podcast about this, so keep an eye out for the podcast getting launched later next week, I believe. With that said, Andrew, do you have any last minute things you want to talk about or say or anything like that?
I'm sure there are a lot of questions that are out there about drones still, and maybe people, were afraid to ask or whatever, but just reach out to me directly. I'm happy to chat. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. Love to help educate and help others any way I can. So
what's your email address, Eric? I'll just drop it right here.
Yeah, it's Andrew@HeartlandDroneCompany.com.
And then I'll also link out your website to the chat as well.
Cool.
If you folks don't have that information and you do want to talk to Andrew as well, feel free to contact Chris and myself. We both will be more than happy to fire off information to Andrew. Joe, you are 100% right. There will be a copy of this recording coming up on YouTube within 48 hours, so it'll be there. We can also email it to us if you want. Here's my email, so I have your request, and I'll be happy to forward it off to you.
Joe, and ask me questions if you have any.
Yeah, definitely. He is interested in the content, which is perfect. Yeah, so Joe, feel free. His Andrew's email is right there as well. With that said, again, I keep saying thank you. I love having chats about drones and cool technology that real estate agents can use in their daily life. Thank you so much for spending some time with us chatting about this. We'll probably have you back on in a future episode, hopefully. So again, thank you. And if you do need anything, please reach out to us. Also, on behalf of everybody, if you folks do have any questions, you can always email support@EasyAgentPro.com with your question. You can also click the help button in the upper right-hand corner of the lead side dashboard. I believe Andrew's information is also in the upgrade section, if I remember correctly. It is somewhere on the site, so you will have his information there as well. We will be back, not this Wednesday, but the Wednesday after with another special guest. I'm not quite sure who it's going to be yet, but we will have another special guest. So feel free to hang out. And if you do have questions, again, don't hesitate to ask us, and we will see you soon. Thank you.